Now, for some time now, we've been discussing the matter of historical documentation of UFOs consistently and worldwide since before the time of Christ. We finally wound up with the entry of Columbus in his ship's log, October the 11th, 1492, after he sailed into the Bermuda Triangle, that he saw lights popping and flopping around, and he thought there was land there, and there wasn't any land there. He sailed in the Bermuda Triangle. So very briefly, we've taken time out to make some remarks about the Bermuda Triangle. And going way back into the remote past, we find Solon, S-O-O-L-O-N, and Plato mentioning Atlantis, the sunken continent, it's supposed to be sunk out there, and the fact that Atlantis was named after a giant named Atlas. The reason why this is so significant is because the one eye, the all-seeing eye, was supposed to be from a race of people who had one eye in the middle of their forehead. And in Greek mythology, these are called Cyclops, a one-eyed giant. In the book of Zechariah, the Antichrist is said to have one eye. Now, according to Plato, Atlantis was settled by Poseidon, the Greek god of the seas, who took one of the daughters of men. That is, this alien from outer space cohabitated with a woman. Now go back to the other tapes and pick out those blue bloods that were supposed to be born of an alien woman with webbed feet, a four-fingered hand, webbed like an aquatic animal, with a cone-shaped head, like a fish, like you see at the Vatican when a Vatican Council meets. Dagon, the fish god. The oldest son of Poseidon was Atlas. Poseidon is always drawn with a trident, and he's being drawn in a war chariot by horses. His oldest son was Atlas. In Greek, they sacrificed horses. In a golden temple. Is that right? Do you ever wonder why old David cut the hocks, the heel tendons of those horses of the Syrians when he caught them? Did you ever wonder why God told Solomon, don't you get any horses out of Egypt? Let me tell you, that Bible sheds so much light on a college education that it's just pitiful. Zeus, the leading Greek god, called a conference when Poseidon, the sea god, and his sons, including Atlas, quote, began to lose their divine natures. For further revelation, see the archaic Elizabethan English in Jude and Genesis 6, and for goodness sake, don't fool with the Greek. In regard to the history of Atlantis, it's described in the next one that described it as Crantor, 300 BC, then Poseidonus, 135 BC, and Strabo, 67 BC to 23 AD. And the Alexandrians all believed the destruction of Atlantis to be a scientific fact. Somebody got drowned out. For further details, see an archaic Elizabethan English King James Bible printed in 1611. Francisco Lopez de Gomara said that the USA was Atlantis. But of course, that doesn't work. But when you get dealing with Atlantis, this sunken thing in this Bermuda Triangle, you get into more than any bunch of physicists or scientists or astronomers has ever been able to handle. And in scores and scores of books written to prove that there is something going on there of a supernatural, unexplained nature. And in scores of books written to debunk these disappearances, the historical evidence for something going on is 150,000 times more than the debunking that's going on. Joshua Slocum, a veteran sailor, he set out to go around the world in a 40-foot boat, In November 1909, he disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. A veteran copter pilot, January of 1942, Major Claude Riddle, and 24 people saw something shimmering like a diamond as big as a DC-7. In 1872, the Mary Celestia was found abandoned in the Atlantic with clear air, no turbulence involved, and no waves, and nothing out of place. It was abandoned. The Freya, F-R-E-Y-A, was abandoned the same way in the Pacific in 1902. Only one marked mariner returned of two sent to find Flight 19, and on that flight, Taylor said, quote, "Don't come after me. They look like they're from outer space." The superfortress vanished 100 miles off Bermuda in 1947. In March 48th, Al Snyder, a famous jockey, and a friend disappeared. They disappeared off the Sandy Key at the tip of Florida. He rode out on a skiff from a rented cabin cruiser and was never found, and the skiff was found later on a small island. In December the 1st, 1954, a freighter disappeared with 22 men, and a lifebuoy was found. In July of 1968, a C-119 flying boxcar, 280 miles from Miami en route to the Grand Trunk, disappeared. Not one piece was ever found, and the weather was fair the whole time. Two KC-135 Stratotankers, the 19th Bomber Wing of SAC from Homestead, Florida, jets with 11 in each plane, were found empty. Life rafts and wreckage, they did not collide because the second pile of floating wreckage were found 160 miles from the first pile, 400 miles east of Fort Pierce. On June the 7th, 1965, 10 men, including Major Louis Giuntoli, a C-119 cargo plane disappeared. The co-pilot Lawrence Gare's 440 troop carrier wing disappeared. Homestead for the Grand Trunk twin engine lost contact at 10:30. 33 planes and 7 ships covered 77,000 miles and searched for 5 days. They picked up 3 small items August the 17th and never found one man or one plane. You know how many ships have disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle? The Genovese, August the 23rd, 1730. The Snowboy, July the 4th, 1963. The USS Tug Nina, March 15th, 1910. The Grampus, March 3rd, 1843. The Caribe, October 9th, 1971. That bird was 338 feet long. The Sturdy, July 14th, with 75 officers and men. It was made out of stainless steel. It had 4 Packard diesel engines, could do 15 knots. The Elizabeth, April 5th, 1971. The Makona, March 4th, 12th, 1941. The Raifuku Mara, January 1921, whose last coded message was, quote, "Danger, like danger now, come quick." The Home Sweet Home, a 65-foot cruiser, sailed January 13th, disappeared January 27th with 7 passengers. I don't have time to read the other 30. One writer says the Earth has 6 true oceans, and the Earth is a crystal, a 3-sided pyramid with a flat base at the North Pole, the apex in the Antarctica, and APICES at 4 points, with 3 triangular continents, 3 triangular oceans running between them: Asia and Australia, Europe and Africa, and the Americas. He found 10 vortexes. They were found ringing the Earth in 2 belts, 72 degrees apart. All but 2 are over water. He ran skewers through the globe to opposite vortex. All 5 were trying to go through the center. And all the vortexes are 72 degrees apart. Now, we're ready for them UFOs. And we're ready for them UFOs with a thorough background and thorough understanding, which most of the works don't contain. We run down the UFOs, the understanding that they are connected with the Bermuda Triangle, they're connected with the underground, they have to do with the superior intelligence that man is looking for, And the men that are looking for this are the one world, one global citizens who at the Club of Rome have divided the earth off into 10 sections for 10 kings. This was done more than 30 years ago. The 10 kings are in Revelation chapter 17 and Daniel chapter 2. The Bible always runs so far ahead of the 20th century, it can't catch up with it. Furthermore, this search for the superior extraterrestrial intelligence is connected with aliens from outer space who are associated with web feet, web hands, conical heads, and blue bloods, or blue skin. They've been around for centuries. They've been flying machines for centuries and putting out machine-powered jets with lights and flames for centuries, and dumping all kinds of things in this earth that could not be explained by anybody, including any physicist in the 20th century, including Einstein and Hawkins, all the brick-brained, dumbbell, block-headed brickbats that don't know what they're talking about. And they inevitably will be connected with the Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, Janet Reno, the SWAT troops, the DEA, the UN, and a police state set up by Slick Willie and the Clintonistas. That's where we're heading. But you've got to get the connections. The connections go far beyond any such thing as Freemasonry, or Illuminati, or Rosicrucians. They deal with official government agencies in contact with something we have not yet talked about, nor have we yet talked about the contact. But Weons is getting ready to talk about it. Notice the peculiar affinity that UFOs have for water and electricity. In the New American Library of Flying Saucer, the New American Library Publishers for the Flying Saucer Reader, 1967, page 169 and 170, you find UFOs connected with a blackout January the 13th, 1966, 75 miles in area in Franklin County in Andover, Maine, which blacked out the Telstar communication satellite from 4:30 p.m. to 11:20 p.m. UFOs and glowing discs were connected with the Cuernavaca, Mexico, all lights out blackout September 3rd, 1967. A UFO over a power station had all the automatic keys all turned off and then back on August the 17th, 1959. Rome was darkened as a luminous UFO flew over August the 3rd, 1958. Mexico and 2 states were darkened. Part of East Texas darkened December 4th and December 2nd, 1967. 40,000 people lost power. In December 26th of 65, in Buenos Aires, the whole city and 50 miles out was dark and people were trapped in subways. In November of 1965, a northeast blackout New England, and covered an area 4 times as large as New England. UFOs, whatever they are, have an affinity for electricity and water. In some way, they're connected. And we've talked about the water connection in regards to the Bermuda Triangle. Now we get down to the matter of the UFOs themselves. In the first place, let me confess that I've seen more than I'd care to count. I have never seen a flying saucer. But let me tell you, on my back at night on the beaches of Pensacola, Florida in the summer, and on my back at night lying in lawn chairs in Texas in the summer, I have seen lights going zigzag back and forth, running and stopping, stopping and running, running and stopping, that you couldn't explain any way on God's earth. I'd say 40 would be a conservative number. That isn't all. I've been out fishing at night with my mullet net and bayous and have seen a nice bright light show up on the horizon and go from a horizon to horizon in less than 15 seconds without making a sound. And it wasn't going west-east like a satellite. It was going south to north, and it had no red and green blinking lights. That isn't all. We've had a photographer here in Pensacola Gulf Breeze photograph the gyrations of a UFO in color for 20 minutes. That isn't all. I've had the power station across from our school go up in explosion with the whole area turning in electricity and fire catching place in a woods across from the school in the direction where the UFO observed leading out over Gulf Breeze. I think if you don't believe in UFOs, you're mentally sick. Which means that every member of the CFR and the CIA and the DEA and the NSA and Congress who is about to deny the information I'm about to give, I'm going to flat give you some information, baby. I mean, you're going to get you some information, is either mentally incompetent or he is a bald-faced liar perjuring his character and testimony. UFOs have been seen, they've been entered, they've been tracked, they've been collided with, they've been shot at, and if that weren't enough, I'm going to give you a detailed account of a engineer professor who was called to examine one out at Roswell Air Force Base and give you the measures in it and tell you how it operates. If you don't believe in UFOs, you're crazy or a liar. Now, very quickly, as some of this material has been given before, Villalobos, October 15, 1957, was taken onto a UFO and claims blood samples were taken from him. He winds up with enough radioactive stuff on him to kill him, and 2 punctures in his skin where it looked like it had, quote, been renewed. He claimed beams from saucers could heal and grow teeth. Miracles of healing. Signs and wonders. Revelation 16, Mark 16. Villalobos said they had him tied up with a woman and mated with a woman who grunted like an animal. He said everything was very sexy, but the thing that bothered him was the only noises she made were the noise of an animal. How about that? Beauty and the Beast or Boas and the Beast? Herbert Sherman of Nebraska, December 3rd, 1967, Ashland, Nebraska, said UFOs were interested in water reservoirs. He said they were made out of pure magnesium. He said the aliens spoke broken English and had bases in Florida and the North Pole. He said the symbol in their uniform was the symbol of the Health Education Welfare Department and the Medical Corps of the Army, Navy, and Marines. A scapulus, the Greek serpent of healing, the healing god. For the original, see Numbers 21 in an archaic Elizabethan 1611 authorized version. He said the invisible force field can be thrown around the ship in a circular pattern. He claimed they had it in an X-ray machine that scans the victim like a huge eye. Now go back in the view. Don't forget so quickly. Pick up that Cyclops, or them Lama Tibetan monks performing that lobotomy in the front by that gland with bamboo knives. Get a hold of that thing. That one-eyed Cyclops with the all-seeing eye. He says they had no eyes, they were 5 feet tall with no neck, and a slit where the mouth should be, and no real ears. Now this stuff here is coming from 2 fellows called Hickson and Parker in Pascagoula, Mississippi. Now after this thing was over, Parker said he could never wear a wristwatch again. People in Mississippi said he, quote, had electricity. Blackouts. Power stations. Computers. And wait till we get the CIA putting electromagnetic waves over an area to brainwash a population. Now, when you get all these things together, we'll get them together in a while, we find, number one, every alien reported is an evolutionist. None of them are deists. None of them show any knowledge of Bible prophecy. They all pose as saviors. They're interested in electricity. They're interested in blood specimens. They have no morals. They connect with black cars and black helicopters. They've been around since before 200 BC. They are connected with Ouija boards, bending light rays, stopping motors, generators, magnesium, sulfur, and the Bermuda Triangle. These are their, what we call, associations. Ralph Ditter, Zanesville, November the 3rd, 1965, saw one 20 feet in diameter, flying about 47 feet high. It was noiseless. He made 3 photographs of it. Dan and Garrett Jaroslav took a Polaroid swinger January 9, 1967, and made 4 shots in St. Clair, Michigan. Dr. Alan Hynek of Northwest University said it is very unlikely the photographs are hoaxes. In September 29, 1958, Nike missile men reported a landing and takeoff of a glowing UFO at an Air Force base. A public information officer at the Laughlin Air Force Base said, quote, "It was welding torches on top of trucks repairing a transmission line. It was a power failure." This was denied flatly. Somebody else said it was a 200-watt bulb in a farmer's barn. But the farmer's barn was deserted and unwired. In 1965, the Air Force said it was planets like Jupiter and Regia and Capella and Betelgeuse and Aldebaran, Aldbresen. All those planets from the opposite side of the Earth at the time that the UFOs were sighted. So they corrected and said we went Montana State reports for stars. They weren't visible there either. In April 8, 1964, an unmanned Gemini was joined by 4 objects, all recorded and maintained one orbit, and then left. By the way, those were photographed on Life magazine and published in Life magazine, where you can see them following the unmanned Gemini, and TV viewers watched them for over half an hour. The alibi was these were structured pieces on booster craft blown away. But a booster and craft enter as a single unit. Gordon Cooper was silenced on reporting a green object with a red tail going east to west, opposite from the satellite direction. NBC saw this with 100 technicians. The United States Air Force is a pack of liars, and they count on NSA and CIA for their security. That's tied up to the CFR. Remember the first tape? In June the 4th, 65, Whit and McDivitt were followed by 3 weird objects with arm-like projections. The Air Force said this was the Pegasus satellite. The Air Force tried to alibi it, but the tracking system showed it was 1,200 miles away. They said recheck, it might have been only 12 miles away. But the machine professed to be so accurate it could locate a needle in orbit. How could you make a mistake of 12 miles to 1,200 miles on a machine that could locate a needle in orbit? NORAD. It was 1,200 miles away. April the 30th, 1962, Walker in an X-15 at 2,000 miles an hour was followed by 5 discs in echelon. The photograph by a rear-view camera came out, and the Air Force said it was 5 ice flakes. Your federal government are pathological liars. You can no longer trust them for anything. In November 57, Olin Moore of Montville, Ohio, took a close-up of a grounded UFO. It was taken by federal officers to Washington and was 3 days in the basement. He was sworn to secrecy. He was quartered with a federal agent. 90% of his questions he was asked were checked out as a truth and a lie detector, and the information was never published. In 1948, a Navy scientist at White Sands Proving Ground tracked 18,000-mile-an-hour object going. In 1952, a pilot, navigation, and crewman of the B-29 tracked formation at 5,000 miles an hour and a mothership at 9,000 miles an hour. That's the White Sand Proving Ground in Southwest America. You better keep that one. Killian, an American airline pilot, February 24th, 1949, was supposed to have seen Air Force bombers refueling from a tanker aircraft. Quote, I know what a B-47 looks like, and I know what a KC-97 tanker looks like, and what they look like operating at night, and that's not what I saw. He was then instructed not to say one more word about it to anybody, and it was circulated a statement that he had recanted, but it was unsigned. That's your federal government. IRS, HRS, CIA, EPA, BATF, and all the other, quote, agencies. They constitute the biggest pack of liars that ever fell out of the back end of the tribulation. They now have a perfect president to work with. A chronic liar. And the news media will back them up 100%. 100%. Not 90. 100. There is not the slightest chance that anybody in America, on the North American continent, can obtain the news. The really shocking, unusual, radical news has nothing to do with queers getting married or queers getting into the Boy Scouts or the grade schools. The real news has nothing to do with a woman general or a woman machine gunner or a woman circuit court judge or a woman business executive. The real news has nothing to do with O.J. Simpson cutting somebody's throat and then trying to bribe the public out by pretending somebody else did it. The real news has nothing to do with an armed robber like Rodney King getting beat up for resisting arrest and cleaning up $3 million of taxpayers' money. That isn't the news. The real news has nothing to do with North or South Korea or Lebanon or Rabbi Rabin or the Pope. The real news has no connection with the European common market or inflation or the interest rate. It has to do with what may be going on under your feet while you listen to this tape. Now, in all this stuff, there's an attempt to explain it away. And it goes on constantly. The thing is to keep you from finding out what's going on. For something is going on, and government agencies are involved. In 1983, December the 1st, Colonel Charles Halt, H-A-L-T, I believe, or H-A-I-T, produced the Pentagon Papers, which are said to state 3 goals for the American military. 1, abolish all private property, the first tenet of Karl Marx. 2, abolish the free enterprise capitalistic system, the second tenet of Karl Marx. And finally, federalize all real estate. Now, if you want to see this done before the papers picked it up, you'll find in my book called Ruckman's Apocalypse a picture of a demoniac judge with some funny-looking teeth sitting behind a judge's bench. In front of him, with an American flag there, is found federal courts, federal judges, federal schools, federal drugs, federal prostitution, one race, one sex, one bank, one religion. That's what's going on. And it's going on. Now, down to specifics. After all these thousands of reported UFOs, the government finally had to do something. The first government UFO investigation took place in January 22nd of 1948 by the U.S. Air Force. It was called Project Sign. The final conclusion of the United States Air Force in 1948, 3 years after World War II closed, was, quote, "They are craft." Did you get that? Have you forgotten the first two tapes on the craftsman? And what the god thought said to Osiris? "I am the grand master of the craftsman." Have you forgotten the Antichrist promoting craft in Daniel I gave you? Did you forget the passage in Revelation 17 about the craftsman bewailing the destruction of Babylon? How could you forget so quickly? Craft from another world. This was immediately rejected by General Vandenberg, the head of the U.S. Air Force. You say, why? Because he's either psycho or he's a liar. That's why. Isn't that something? Borman and Lovell have a photograph they took from Gemini that shows twin ovals glowing on the underside of their craft. They were blue. The photograph was in 1965, and the UFOs that followed the Gemini craft did it on TV before 50 million viewers. The general of the U.S. Air Force is a liar, or he's mentally sick. December the 13th, 1966, John Hopp of Newport, Rhode Island, said, "Nothing like it in the years of observation." He said he saw aliens dressed in silver clothes with metallic skin, Nordic women that bite, have slant eyes, and guttural voices. Remember Boas with his animal mate? The information that comes from Kundalini Shakti on the third eye of the yoga says, biological energy resides in a body called serpent power, which is the potential of nature since the serpent lies coiled. In November the 2nd, 1957, in Cleveland, Texas, sheriff and deputy with two witnesses saw a glowing blue-green light land on a highway. It turned red and killed all the lights and generators in the car. Remember the material in the blackouts? This was seen again at Leroy, Kansas, 60 years earlier. There were 4 reports that night. 60 miles northeast of Frisco, a luminous red cigar-shaped object was seen half a dozen times over a water tank. It was hit with 22 rifles. It twanged, flared bright red when hit, and went on. The Travis Air Force Base said it was Venus. A red cigar-shaped object over a water tank hit with 22 was Venus. That's your Pentagon. That's your Air Force. August the 14th, 57, an air crew of a C-47, Captain Rabarso and Suarez, veterans, at 160 miles an hour at 5,000 feet, saw a disc shape with a dome on top, a shiny dome on top, whereupon their radio went out, the motors sputtered, and the lights dimmed as it whizzed by. Water and electricity. Water and electricity. February 26, 59, a glowing yellow-orange disc was watched 20 minutes by a traffic control officer in Airport Tower at the Royal Air Force Base at Stanhope, England. It said, quote, "The light, varying in intensity, climbed away at great speed." It was Venus. Don't you know, baby? April 18, 62, a blinding flash occurred 70 miles west of Reno, Nevada, reported in 5 states, and the Atomic Energy Commission said there were no explosions. It was tracked on a radar, followed by an armed jet interceptor when it exploded east to west. It was large, glowed red. After it disappeared off the radar, a UFO landed at a power substation in Eureka, Utah, and stayed 42 minutes. Everett Clark of Downey, Tennessee, who professed to have been in a UFO, said the inhabitants talked like German soldiers. Pale faces, gray suits, like German officers in black leather jackets. You'd better remember that. That's your SWAT teams. Black uniforms and blast masks. And your security around Groom Lake and Area 51, we'll talk about in a minute, have black uniforms and drive black Cadillacs. Their funds are called the Black Budget out of Congress, $2 billion a year. Pretty good money, I would say. Pretty good money. Now there was another investigation of the UFO. In 1949, February 11th, a project was started called Project Grudge. This was upgraded in 1951 to Project Blue Book. And for Project Blue Book, the CIA. Now we're getting somewhere. Here come the UFOs of the conspirators. Here's the Roman Catholic CIA, founded by the Roman Catholic William Bill Donovan, Wild Bill Donovan, with the head, the Roman Catholic William Colby, set up to create emergencies by JFK, the Roman Catholic dictator, in 1962. And here they are choosing the panel to investigate UFOs, called the Robertson Panel. Do you know what they came to? You know what the conclusion was from Project Blue Book? This is ESOX, the UFO Encyclopedia, Putnam Sons, New York, page 269. When the CIA finished setting up their own panel to get their own conclusion in 1949 and 1952, they came to the conclusion that all reports about UFOs were dangerous and should be suppressed. Whereupon the CIA called for censorship of the news media. That isn't all. After Project Blue Book, the CIA decided that the FBI and the CIA should investigate anybody who reported a UFO, and the Air Force was commanded to turn observers over to the FBI. Now listen. That's a law enforcement agency. You go back to the first tape, you find the CIA was supposed to have nothing to do with law enforcement or internal security. Only foreign espionage. Now they're told to take you if you see a UFO and turn you over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Who's the head of that? You get one guess. A Roman Catholic. Mr. F-R-E-E-H. You have a Catholic setup. At this time, the CIA formed a group called the Committee for the Scientific Investigation of the Paranormal, called CSICOP, CCOP. They published a monthly called The Skeptical Inquirer. It was founded in 1976 under the sponsorship of the American Humanistic Association. The founder and chairman of this anti-UFO group is Paul Kurtz, a professor of philosophy at New York State University in Buffalo, New York. Their job is to convince you UFOs don't exist. In 1976. If the information I'm about to give you now, is half correct, Professor Paul Kurtz should be sent to a funny farm, and the publishers of the Skeptical Inquirer should be required to spend at least 4 hours a day with a shrink for a year. Now, this Blue Book project was called the Condon Report. The project cost the taxpayers $523,000, but the Air Force let Colorado University publish it as a Bantam book. I've quoted those books several times in this tape, and keep the royalties. The faker in charge, Edward Conlon, was set up by the CIA, and he only investigated 59 out of 500 cases and did not give a full investigation to any of these. When the AAAS asked for an inquiry and almost got it, the Air Force announced the project was closed permanently. The conclusion was all witnesses, all of them, that's now over 5 million, were liars or deluded. You see, my position wasn't stretched. It was their position. They said the fellow's deceived, he's psycho, or he's a liar. That's exactly what I just said. I said a man who denies UFOs is either a perjured liar or he's a psychopathic nut and mentally sick. As of December 17, 1960, the Conlon report, the Blue Book Project said, nobody has ever seen a UFO. They were seen during the investigation. There were 15 sightings of UFOs during the examinations. Dr. Edward Conlon threw out all the evidence, photos and witnesses prior to 1965, and Charles Bennett of Denver decided the witnesses should be investigated instead of the sightings. The reaction to this was the forming of the NICAP, which is the National Investigating Committee on Aerial Phenomena. They went to work and secured a congressional hearing, and then at the congressional hearing were forbidden to submit photographs, evidence, testimonies, or any information. They were stopped by 3 groups. The FBI, now headed up by the Roman Catholic Free, the Air Force, and the Roman Catholic CIA, which was headed up by William Colby. They were stopped cold July 28, 1968. That was the last government investigation. And from that time on, the Supreme Court has ruled that nobody has access to any material of the CIA under the Freedom of Information Act. They are exceptions. In 1988, 20 minutes of colored film were taken in Gulf Breeze, Pensacola, of 5 different positions of a UFO near and far, and the place where these were taken are less than a quarter of a mile of where I fished for mullet at night for nearly 25 years. Then animals were found dead near a power line with surgical laser removal of organs. The last one being this year in North Alabama on the farm of the father of one of my students. So many were seen in Kansas, over 1 million, they're not even reported anymore. Now here might be a good place to go into the Philadelphia experiment, but I'm going to skip it, as it deals only with the matter of bending light rays and electromagnetic force fields and things, and we'll get into those a little bit later when we get into what's going on out in Southwest America. But right now, we need to take a look at what's going on underground instead of up over Yohade. Now, according to Valdemar Valerian, V-A-L-E-A-R-E-R-I-N, Matrix 3 and Matrix 2, the information I'm about to give you is historically correct and tells you what's going on now under your feet, while the government is making all-out efforts to take every weapon you've got. And by the way, that CIA, old Wild Bill Donovan, the Roman Catholic who set it up in the USS, was decorated with the Grand Cross of the Order of Sylvester, July 1944, or 1944, by Pope Pius XII. In 1941, as you remember, Donovan made an alliance with the Catholic CIA as head of the OSS. You know who Pope Pius XII was, who decorated the head of the CIA in July 1944? He was Adolf Hitler's cardinal, papal nuncio in Berlin, who got Hitler to sign a concordance with Pope Pius XI. This fellow decorated the founder of the CIA, Donovan, in July 1944, became Pope Pius XII, who had a concordance with Adolf Hitler throughout the entire war. Now go back and check that stuff on those black-dressed SS. Those SS had black uniforms. Now you suddenly run into black Cadillacs and black uniforms and black helicopters on a black budget. Now here's the format. At a number of places in the Southwest, DULCE, New Mexico, or Arizona, I forget which. According to what I have here, it's northeast of Flagstaff, southwest of Denver, northwest of Albuquerque, near the San Juan River, straight north of Gallup, New Mexico. Another area is called Groom Lake, Area 51, and a Nevada test site, and a Roswell Air Force Base, and a facility, all government, called 29 Palms in California. All of these places I've been talking about here are government setups supported by taxpayers' money, and they're all connected with UFO and aliens. The people in charge of these are the NSCID, the National Security Intelligence Directives, the NSA, the National Security Agency, the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency, the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the IRS, the International Revenue Service. It's operated by taxes. Now, according to material found in the matrices, 3 of them, by Valdemar Valerian, Valdamar, Valerian, not only do they have UFOs to deal with and build, but have aliens to work with and have had them to work with for years and have been working with them for years. That's the shocker. In dealing with the area called Area 51, there was a report given on May the 15th, 1991, about the legal perimeter of this area. And May 16th, the idea was it was public land. Norio Hayakawa of the Civilians Intelligence Network came to the perimeter and found a guard shack and checkpoints to the Lake Groom area. He found unmarked buses carrying workers off of Highway 375 and back after traveling on a dirt road. Their group was buzzed by black, unmarked helicopters and then stopped by unmarked black cars without license plates. Hey man, is this mafia? And held an automatic gunpoint. You're not allowed to carry an automatic gun. While all their cameras were confiscated, and the people that held them up at gunpoint and robbed them gave no identification, no warrants, no explanation, no excuses. Now, isn't that something? That's in America. Anthony Hilder of Radio Free America sent letters to the ACLU. Hey, you ought to get a flip from them, shouldn't you? A citizen on public land being handled like that, buzzed by unmarked black helicopters, stopped by black cars, and held up with automatic gunpoint with equipment stolen after no identification. Hey, man, how about them American Civil Liberty Union, man? Don't they do some civil rights, man? The letters went to the Attorney General of Nevada, but lo and behold, she turned out to be a Roman Catholic woman named Cafferata, a district attorney. Letters were sent to Senator Floyd Lamb, Congressman Bob Dornan, the Wilcox County Sheriff. They got nothing back. As a matter of fact, later a sheriff's patrol car blocked their way out to the area demanding a Social Security number, and 2 days later Gary Schultz filed a court order in L.A. against the Groom Lake Installation Command, violating county regulations, endangering the citizens of legal public land, illegal harassment of a helicopter on a legal country road, which is absolutely true, and other charges, and the ACLU did nothing. They were told that the place was under the security of a group called Wackenhut, W-A-C-K-E-N-H-U-T, which is a company full of CIA and NSA personnel in charge of security of underground facilities in Nevada and California, including S-1 area or Area 51. The headquarters of Wackenhut is in Florida, with branches in Las Vegas. Like the Federal Reserve Bank, remember, it is privately owned and operated. It is funded by the Russell Trust, which is a, quote, black fund organization that funds the Skull and Bones Society, and the operatives are connected with the drug traffic called Black Rose that operate in the Golden Crescent and the Golden Triangle, the center of the entire drug activity of the world. Now, have you got some stuff here? The black budget, the black fund, the black rose, the black Cadillac, the black uniforms, and the black helicopters? How about that? Black and beautiful, ain't it? Who originated that? A Roman Catholic, Heinrich Himmler. Don't you remember the Topskopf Corps, the Death's Head unit? They replaced the brown shirts. They wore black uniforms. Like Galen, the SS intelligence security man the CIA took under their wing at the end of World War II. You talk about Nazism. They're trying to make you think the Ku Klux Klan are Nazis. The Nazis are the federal agencies. And they hold up people at armed gunpoint and take what they have with no explanation. And when you make an appeal, you get a blank. Groom Lake, Area 51, the Nevada test site, 29 Palms have underground facilities, and according to Valerian, there are bases in Iraq and Iran. In these places, there are military uses of, quote, electromagnetic spectrum for mind control. And that ain't all. The major underground bases in the West are revealed in the Dulce Papers, where the observers claim that underground are liquid processing vats, cameras, fluid processing bladders and corridors, amniotic sac containing alien fetuses, breeding tubes and close-up of alien fetuses, cylindrical breeding chambers with coded elevator controls and ID door cards, conveyor systems and control stations, vat piping arrangements, alien breeding facilities, and uniform security at Dulce that would turn your hair gray. What's the problem? Covert activities carried on by the CIA. Isn't that something? In the chronology of human and alien interaction and covert intelligence operations, we have, coming from the Nevada Aerial Research Group, Box 81407, Las Vegas, Nevada 891080, sightings. Hidden tunnel systems found in 1868, 900 miles long near Lima, Peru. 1878, John Martin of Dallas sees discs. 1883, Jose Bonilla sees them. 1896, a wave of sightings. 1909, the first European sighting in England. Then Fatima, of course, it was a UFO, 1917 to 1920. UFOs near Australia. In 1933, here comes Roosevelt, and German tourists go into the southwest buying land right and left, checking mineral rights and caves and caverns. FDR met in Cartagena, Colombia, the exact place where Bush met to talk about the drug war of 1989. There were 487 sightings of UFOs in Scandinavia, 240 in Norway, 96 in Sweden, 157 in Finland. Then there was an interaction with aliens called the Greys in 1934, before World War II, near Balboa by a naval ship. The Germans recovered a downed alien aircraft in 1938, a year before the war. And at that time, Orson Welles was allowed to put out War of the Worlds as an introduction for the scenario that was to follow. In 1943, the British intelligence officers in Canada trained the United States OSS officers, later Wild Bill Donovan, decorated by the Pope. In 1944, a disc was seen alongside an RAF bomber in the Bass Straits for 20 minutes. In February of 1945, the engines of this Kugelblitz were extracted and sent to the South Pole. And it was decided that Nazis would continue as a secret society in America and South America.